about half an hour of your time, so I want to try and use it as efficiently as possible, but I am aiming to have 5 minutes or so at the end for questions, so if you think of anything that you'd like to know, please do let me know. So I am currently taking a master's in computational law at the University of Alberta. It's a joint program between the Faculty of Law and the Department of Computing Science. It's a part of my ongoing effort to find the best possible way to combine my skills in programming with my legal skills. And the thing that I'm studying is declarative programming languages for automating legal reasoning, which is a lot of mumbo jumbo, but here's what it means. Tools for taking what a lawyer knows about the law and turning it into something that a computer can actually work with. And that is, that's how lawyers like to start contracts, and that's also how programmers like to start their software, is with definitions. So law as code, digitizing legal rules to automate legal services. Automate legal services, I'm not talking here about back-end stuff like Clio helps us take care of. I'm talking about tools that deliver legal services to people with less or no lawyer involvement. And what does digitizing legal rules mean? Well, if you have a set of rules and you need a computer to do something with those rules, you have two different paradigms of programming that you can use. The one that everyone is familiar with, what everyone thinks of as programming, is actually called procedural programming. It starts at the top, it goes step by step. There are if-then clauses that kind of branch out in different ways, but that's the procedural paradigm. There's another paradigm, the declarative programming paradigm. And in declarative programming, you don't tell the computer how to solve the problem, you just describe the problem to the computer. You're not telling it what to do first, what to do second, you're telling it all of the rules that it must follow at all times. And my thesis is that this is the kind of technology that lawyers ought to be using more and more in the future, because that's actually how we write laws. That's how we write contracts, is in declarative language. So I'm going to be talking exclusively about tools that use the declarative programming paradigm. There's a lot of other tools out there that do similar things, but they don't do it in that way. Those sorts of things won't be here today. So, 7 cool tools. I'm also going to show you how to use one of them, and at the end I'm going to try and convince you guys that all lawyers should be programmers. Maybe we can start now with a show of hands. How many people in this room already believe that all lawyers should be programmers? I'm counting like maybe 12. Okay, if that number goes up at the end, I'm happy. So, first tool. This is the one I think everyone in the room is most likely to have heard of. How many people are familiar with Neota Logic? Yeah, it's approaching half. So Neota Logic is a company, and it's also the name of the software. They are out of New York, and they build a tool like the next two I'm going to tell you, which is for building web-based interviews and then using the results of those interviews to do document automation. So when I say coding in Neota Logic, this is what coding looks like. This is the interface that you would use in order to tell Neota the sequence of interview questions that should be asked. As you can see, it's not what you would typically think of as programming, but this is declarative programming in Neota Logic. This is also a part of their interface. Again, it's a little bit complicated. It's obviously something you'd have to take some time to learn, but it's not just typing text into a compiler. This is what the development environment looks like. Neota does this very interesting thing where they have come up with a program where they will offer a law school the materials and the resources online that they need in order to offer courses, a one-semester course at a law school for law students on how to develop interviews with Neota Logic. And that program, typically they work in teams, typically they pair up with a nonprofit organization, and at the end of 4 months, they're able to build an online tool that provides some sort of access to justice thing. I hope that gives you some idea about how difficult these things are to learn. It's not outside of the realm of possibility, and they are marketed directly at lawyers, so they know where you're coming from. This is an example of what the interface actually looks like when it's built. Not much detail here, but this is something that Neota built for themselves. Couple of things important to know about Neota logic. The last time I checked, and please don't quote me on this, I'm not here to sell anything, but the last time I checked, it cost in the range of 4 figures, roughly $5,000 a year to get a license for Neota. That's not inexpensive, I guess. And typically, you're also going to need some training. They offer paid courses, unless you're a giant nerd like me or you happen to go to one of these law schools. And yeah, so that's Neota logic. Number 2. I think the answer is nobody. How many people have heard of Oracle policy automation? Oh, it's not nobody. That's fantastic. There was like 4 people. The nerds. My peeps. So yeah, the reason that you have not, most of you, heard of Oracle policy automation is because Oracle policy automation is not sold to lawyers, which is fascinating because Oracle is actually the 4th company to own this software. The first company to own this software was a law firm in Australia, and the lawyer wrote it for himself. It was bought by someone. Now, Oracle sells it to governments, and they sell it to insurance companies, and they sell it to banks, and anyone who has a very large call center. And it is not sold to lawyers because their marketing people, their resellers have told me, as soon as the lawyers realize that they would need to charge in some way other than the billable hour, it ceases being interesting to them. It just makes them too darn efficient, and they're not willing to go through the trouble of changing their pricing. So they've stopped trying. But it is very much like Neota logic. This is a part of the development interface. This is where you tell the software what the different entities are that you're dealing with in your code and what their properties are. And unlike Neota, which tries to take the coding part and turn it into a visual thing, Oracle is happy to leave that as typing, but this is what the typing looks like. This is called constrained natural language programming. So what you have here is something that I wrote in a course that I was doing at the university. This is an encoding of the Alberta Adult Interdependent Relationships Act, and this is the software. This is what you type as the programmer. You can read that mostly. There's a few little niggly bits in there with, brackets and weird exists scope and things like that. But for the most part, it's actually readable. This is declarative programming. Okay? That's what I want you guys to understand here. When I talk about coding, that's what coding can look like. And this works great. And what it gives you is an interview. And this is an example of what the interview interface looks like. The important thing to know is that once you've told OPA or Neota or the next tool, once you've told it what data exists, what kinds of information there can be, and then you've told it what the rules are, either you typed it out in a Word document in Oracle or you drew pictures in Neota, the only thing that you have to do then is you have to tell it what question you want answered. It takes that question, it works backwards from that question through all the rules to figure out what pieces of information it needs to know to answer that question. It asks those questions in that order. You don't tell it what to ask, and you don't even have to tell it how. It will come up with a default web interface on its own. So if you're building the tool just for yourself, there is no time spent building the user interface. It generates one automatically for you. This is one that I've manipulated more to make it a little bit easier for end users. And then at the end of the interview, again, without any additional programming, you get a decision screen. Neota has the same sort of thing, and you can see at the top there, the parties are not in an adult interdependent relationship, and then it's got all of the reasons why. And again, no programming for this. This all happens by default because you told it what the objects were, you told it what the rules were, you told it what you were trying to figure out. That's pretty amazing. Because in Oracle you're coding in a natural language, these decision screens come back looking really, really readable out of the box. They're never perfect, and you have to kind of manipulate things in order to get it to the point where you'd be comfortable showing it to a client. But it gets you about 90% of the way there. Oracle also has a couple of features that Neota logic doesn't have. One that I particularly like is you can see here it says no and then yes from 9/11/2018. That's an example of Oracle Policy Automation doing something called temporal reasoning. So whereas in a lot of these systems, it's pretty easy to figure out whether or not a thing is true or false ever, Oracle makes it really easy to figure out whether or not a thing was true or false as of a given date. And if there are things that made it become true and then become false and then become true again, it can automatically generate line graph charts with a calendar at the bottom and show you when it was true and then when it was false. It's really, really sophisticated stuff. So Oracle is probably the gold standard, and as the gold standard, it has a gold standard price. Again, I'm not selling anything, don't quote me. The last time I looked, the advertised minimum purchase price for Oracle Policy Automation was in the range of $50,000. They sell to enterprise. They are moving towards small and medium businesses. Their salespeople can be negotiated with. The good news is that the tool that you use to generate these interviews and debug these interviews is completely free. As long as you don't use it for commercial purposes, you can play with it, figure out whether or not you like it, and then if you do like it, you can negotiate with the salespeople for something less than 50 grand. But that is OPA. Next, and this is where I spend most of my time, this is docassemble. Again, as the name would suggest, it's a tool for automating the assembly of documents, but it also automatically generates web interviews to allow you to populate those documents based on the document template itself. And they recently added a feature just last week that you can now edit that template inside Microsoft Word with an add-on that has all of the details from inside the docassemble server for which field names you can use and things like that. So the interface is getting really, really good. This is what the interview interface looks like. This is a tool that I've been working on. It's an eligibility tool for LEGALESE Alberta. And unlike the ones where you say what the data is and you say what the rules are, in docassemble you do tell it what the data is, and then you give it two things. You give it blocks of code, and this is what you can see here, and then you also give it question blocks. So you're telling it two things. If you need to know something, here's how you might be able to calculate it. And then if you're not able to calculate it, here's how you can ask the user. And then it works backwards from what's in the file. It generates the questions as it needs them, generates your document, and you're off and running. You don't have to do, well, you have to do very little in order to generate a really beautiful user interface. This is what the websites look like pretty much right out of the box. And they look at least as good on a tablet and on a mobile device. It's extremely, extremely stylish as far as these tools go. Now, interestingly, docassemble also has some features that Oracle Policy Automation doesn't have. The most important of which for lawyers is that docassemble is capable of doing multi-user interviews. So imagine you've got a client intake system. A client goes onto your website, they see a nice interview like this. What are we talking about? What kind of issue is this? And then you get to the point in the intake process where if you don't do a conflict check, you probably shouldn't take any more information from them. What docassemble lets you do is have that interview say to the client, okay, thank you, your portion of this interview is now done. Send an email to the lawyer with a link. The lawyer clicks on the link, they log in with their lawyer credentials, and they get the portion of the interview that says, here's what we know already. You need to do a conflict check and tell me whether or not we're conflicted with this person. The lawyer can figure it out. They can click yes or no. And then the interview goes back to the client. The client gets an email and says, okay, we're ready to proceed. This is a feature that does not exist in OPA or Neotologic that I'm aware of, certainly not out of the box. And it is just brain dead easy to implement in docassemble. Jonathan Pyle is a lawyer who works in Pittsburgh in the pro bono realm, and he wrote this software for his own use. And because he is awesome, it is open source software. It is completely free. You cannot beat that kind of value. If you are not the kind of person who feels comfortable running your own web server, and that's most of us, there are services now that charge you, I think it's in the range of like $20 a month to host a docassemble server securely on the cloud for you. So we're talking low hundreds of dollars a year in terms of cost in order to use this tool, which is among the reasons that this is the fastest growing in popularity expert system tool for legal purposes on the market right now. Just this year, for the first time, a nonprofit organization in the United States put out an RFP for a person specifically to build them a docassemble interview. It's gotten to the point now where the people who use this kind of technology are asking not whether or not you can build an expert system, they're asking, do you know how to build with docassemble? So those are the three tools that are for doing those kinds of interviews. The next one is Ergo AI, offered by a company called Coherent Knowledge. Ergo AI is not a low-code or no-code solution. Ergo AI is programming, hardcore programming. And you will see what I'm talking about. The great thing about that, though, is that this really kind of gets to the root of what is possible with this kind of technology. A general-purpose programming language, you can do more kinds of things than just generate a web interview to answer a specific question. So I was trying to think of what kind of an example could I give you guys in a short period of time that might make sense and might draw you out. I presume everyone remembers LSATs. This is what we are tested on. We're tested on our ability to do deductive reasoning in order to get into law schools. So what I did was I decided, okay, let's use Ergo AI to get it to answer the question on the LSAT test. This is the example one online. And you remember, it'll give you a block of text, and this is the block of text that applies to like the next 5 questions, right? So here, company employee generates series of 5-digit product codes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's analogous to our statute. That's the law. It's true for all of the future questions that you need to ask, and you need to be able to explain that law to the computer before you even know what the legal question is you're trying to answer. So what does that look like in Ergo AI? This is the exact same block of text written in the Ergo AI programming language. You'll just have to take my word for it right now. I promise to show you in more detail later, but take my word for it. This does not tell the computer how to do anything. This just restates the rules in the programming language, okay? So you're not generating an algorithm based on a law. You're just translating the law into a different language. So we have the law. Now we need a fact scenario, and we need a legal question that a client needs help with. If the last digit of the product code is 1, it must be true that A, B, C, D, or E. So actually, we don't have one fact scenario here. We have all fact scenarios. The question is about all valid product codes. And we don't have one legal question. We have 5 legal questions. Is the correct answer A? Is the correct answer B? Is the correct answer C? So again, you don't have to write an algorithm. You just have to translate this into the code. And here's what it looks like. That top line is the most complicated part. You can take my word for it. All that that says is generate every possible 5-digit code. That's all that says. And then there's one line for each of the possible answers. This is for the answer A, and let's look at it in comparison to the English language version. So here's what it says. The highlighted part says, the correct answer to question 1 is A, if for all of the codes in the database, it is true that if the code is a valid code and the 5th digit of that code is 1, then it is also true that the first digit of that code is 2. So you can see the syntax is ugly. There's a lot of squiggly lines here. It's like a typographical yard sale. But I'm just translating the question across. I didn't tell it how to answer the question. I just told it the question. And then I have to ask the software, what's the correct answer for question 1? You type in that, you hit enter, and it says A. A is the correct answer. It's checked all 5 of them. A was the only one that was right. That's it. You don't have to write anything else. That's actually all of the code that you need to do that. So expand that out, right? Like this is a toy example, but what if you had a real, more serious research question? What if what you wanted to know was, under Canadian copyright law, if you have a person with an exclusive license to a copyrighted work, and that exclusive license is violated, is it nevertheless possible that under some circumstances that person may not have a remedy, may not be able to sue under the Copyright Act? Obviously, that's a little bit more complicated to write in Ergo AI. In fact, exactly this complicated. Not the end of the world, right? Again, typographical yard sale, but that's just a translation. And when I ran this code as a part of my project at school, it told me about the one case that I already knew of because it had been decided by the Supreme Court of Canada that had this weird outcome. And then it proceeded to tell me about the 2 other factual scenarios in which that same legal circumstance would arise that I did not know of, that had never been litigated. So I told the software what I knew about the rules, and then the software told me what I didn't know about the rules. That's why this is the first wave of artificial intelligence. This is what artificial intelligence described when you used that word in the 1970s and the 1980s. They were talking about declarative logic programming. There is a huge range of potential applications for this stuff. Just massive. Nobody's doing any of it. Now I'm going to tear through a few more here. Ergo by the Accord Project. Ergo is a very overloaded term. The Accord Project is an organization that's trying to come up with a standard programming language for smart contracts. And I haven't had too much of an opportunity to play with it, but I've been watching. They've made amazing progress. Some of you may have seen the recent demo of clause.io that came out last week. I had about a half hour to play with clause.io, and what I decided at the end of that half hour is that I am definitely going to need to learn how to write this programming language. I think there's a very good chance that the Ergo programming language for smart contracts will become the new legalese in which those kinds of contracts are written. And speaking of legalese, there is a software company out of Singapore called LEGALESE. They're also working on a programming language for contracts. Their language is called L4. And one of the fascinating things about this feature, or this programming language, is the feature that they're trying to build in called formal verification. So formal verification means that if you wrote a contract in L4, then when you were done, you would be able to mathematically prove that certain things were true about that contract. Like if you were running an automated burger shop, you could mathematically prove that under normal operations, no one will leave the burger shop without having paid for their burgers. And that is a standard of quality assurance in contract drafting that is not, it doesn't exist right now in the legal realm. It's used for mission critical software, it's used for operating systems, it's used when you're designing hardware, electronics hardware, because these are situations where if you make one mistake in the design, it turns into a deadly problem or a massive recall. And that is increasingly going to be the kind of problems that we can potentially create with poorly written smart contracts. So these guys are trying to get ahead of that curve and make the smart contract something that you can prove will work. Literally, mathematically, prove will work. This is also very cool. This is regulation as a platform. This is something that Data 61 is doing with the Australian government, where, remember, I encoded the statute law in Ergo AI? So imagine if the government just did that for you, and they put the code up on a website, and then whatever software you were trying to build that needed to be able to answer legal questions, it could just connect to the government legislative reasoning server, send the data, get the answer, and you were good to go. If I was Intuit, the QuickTax, TurboTax people, this would have me panicked. And I think that this is also the kind of thing that LexisNexis and Thomson Reuters need to be worried about in the future. This is what it looks like. Okay, so we have a little bit of time left. Should all lawyers code? You guys know my answer, I think yes. But I'm going to try, in the course of one PowerPoint slide, to convince at least some of you that this is the case. Are you ready? Deep breaths. Thank you. Accountants have been coding for 20 years. Accountants rely on math. This is probably the part that's news. Electronic spreadsheets are an easy-to-use, general-purpose, declarative programming tool for math. You don't think of it that way. Why do you not think of it that way? Because it's easy. But the definition of programming does not include the word hard. Excel is declarative math programming. You describe the problem that you want an answer to. You don't tell it which cell to recalculate first. You just describe the problem and it comes up with the solution. They have an easy-to-use, general-purpose programming language for math. They were invented in 1979. By 1999, spreadsheets were a minimum technical competence for accountants in the United States. 20 years. They have increased the accuracy of accountancy services, the efficiency. They've made completely new kinds of services available. And most importantly for the people in this room, they have vastly increased the demand for accountants' services. Lawyers rely on deductive reasoning. Blank is an easy-to-use, general-purpose declarative programming tool. Why is it blank? Well, we don't actually have one yet, right? But the rest of the story is the same. The rest of the story still makes sense. So the question is not, is this the right story? This is what's going to happen, but only if that blank gets filled. Will it? Look at what the code looks like when you're doing Oracle policy automation. You just type that into a Word document. It reads like a contract. Look at Neota logic, where you're just drawing pictures in order to do declarative programming. I have to believe that sometime very soon, a new interface is going to be developed that is going to be a general purpose interface for deductive reasoning with a computer. And when that comes, this story will be duplicated in law. That has already happened in accounting. And when that comes, a lawyer who doesn't code is going to be as laughable as an accountant who doesn't use spreadsheets. Of course we're going to code. We're going to code and we're going to love it because it's going to make us better, it's going to be easy, and it's going to be way better than the alternatives. And if we don't, all the other lawyers are going to eat our lunches. How many people in the room think all lawyers will code? It's more than 12. Should. So we have just a couple of minutes before you guys have to run off. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. Thank you very much. There is a microphone at the back, but if anyone has anything they want to shout out, that's cool too. Go ahead.
I can shout or I can take the mic. Suppose, hypothetically, you already suck at programming now. What do you do to catch up to your future?
Yeah. Step one, don't worry about it. Step two, keep paying attention. And whatever the next thing is that comes out, try that too. It's somebody else's problem right now. They need to make it easier for us. They haven't gotten quite there, but keep your eyes open because it is coming. When you see new things, give them a shot. When it gets to the point where you're basically dragging and dropping and it seems easy, that's what we're hoping for. Yeah, don't worry. They have to come to you.
So if you have a great idea on how you could use this technology to really sort of move your practice forward, are there people that exist today who can assist you in implementing that, and how do you find those folks?
Great, so it depends, unfortunately, on the tool. If you are, for example, very interested in using docassemble, there is a great developer community. They have a Slack channel and a forum that you can get into. There are a few people out there who will kind of advertise themselves as contractors who will develop these kinds of things for you. I'm just using docassemble as an example. The same is true of Ergo AI. The same is true of all of them. But yeah, essentially go to the vendor and start asking questions about that, and they will put you in touch with people who know how to build these things.
Awesome. That's all the time we have for questions, but thanks again so much, Jason.